Hello and welcome to another episode of Software Champion. Today we are going to talk about the way you can create a new .NET ASP.NET Core Web API project and you can containerize it. So let's get started. The first thing is that we need to create an ASP.NET Core Web API project. Okay, let's create the Web API project for .NET Core. So command is .NET new Web API, and I am giving no HTTPS flag because I do not want an SSL HTTPS URL to be created as part of my hosting. So let's start. So while this is being created, I just let you know that you need to have the .NET Core SDK installed in your machine to perform this action. So you can download it from Microsoft's download websites. So in my case, I am using .NET 3.1. So now this is installed. So let's open Visual Studio Code. I generally use Visual Studio Code for all my development purpose. So let's open Visual Studio Code. And okay, so I have it open here. So if you look at the application here, there's a weather focus controller which comes as by default from Microsoft's template, .NET template. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run this. First, let's build it. .NET build. So once it is built, I am now going to run it. .NET run. So once I run this, now you can see the server is up and running on localhost 5000 port. So let me run this. So yeah, so if you see here that it's giving a 404, which basically means that the application is running, but it doesn't find a port which uh, it doesn't find an endpoint which can serve any response. So I'm just going to add the with a focused, and now you can see that the response comes back. So let me go back to the code once more. So if you see here, there is a weather focus controller, and as you know that, on your web API, you have to just, your URL address is the name of the controller without the controller postfix. So you have to basically just take the value which is, or the string which is before the controller keyword, right? And that's exactly what I have done. So I have done localhost 5000 / weather focused, and I get the response back. So now my service is up and running. Let's talk about how to do containerization. So now let's talk about that why we really need. Imagine you are developing an application. You are working on your own laptop with your own set of configurations. Once you are done developing your application, now you want to deploy it, right? So you have your own set of configurations, environmental variable, maybe some files in your file system. So you want that whole package to be running. Now, one way of doing that is you can start creating your own VMs and then prepare your VM runtimes, with SDKs and then copy your binaries and can run them. But then it's not so economical, right? And it's very, very time consuming. So Docker comes into the picture when you want to do it fast and economical. So what container does is it runs a stripped down version of OS. It only has the necessary binaries that are required from the OS. It runs on a host OS of a Docker system and contains the application files of your application packaged within a container with the environment variables, configurations, and binaries all together in one sealed environment. So you take that sealed environment and put it into any container engine which understands how to run that sealed environment or sealed container, it will be able to run that. So in this case, Docker is the container runtime. It will get a little clear when we do our hands-on practical with this, understand it. But let's think for a second that if there is no container and if we have to run our own application, so what we do, we would publish our binaries, we'll get a we'll get a VM or a physical machine or a physical system locally or in cloud, and we'll then have to prepare the VM to install our SDKs, runtimes, necessary softwares, and all that, and then we have to copy our binaries into it, and then we have to run the binaries, right? So that's generally the step. So let's look at that when we are creating Docker file, how these steps gets replicated. So we'll start with first publishing the binaries. So you can do publishing binaries in two ways. I am going to show you the easier way first, where you can publish your binaries locally and then you can copy it over, like how we have described. You can also publish your binaries inside a Docker image itself. So that's a more complex one that maybe we'll do a different video and we'll show you that. But for this video, for this particular course, just think about that. You are going to publish the binaries on your local system and then you are going to copy it over. So let's start with publishing. .NET publish, and you're done, right? So you have published your application in this particular folder. So let's go there, cd, and I do publish, and then I see directory, and then you can see that there is an ASP.NET DLL which is present over here. And let me run this. I'll say .NET and ASP.NET DLL. Oh yeah, so because my application is already running, so let me close it down. Okay, now it should be fine. So this is good. So now it runs. Now you can see that it is running on port 5000 and localhost 5001. So let's go to port 5000. See it. As we did before, and you see that it's running on localhost 5000 port. Now my publish is done. So once my publishing is done, now what I need to do is now I have to create the Docker file. So let's just create a Docker file. It will be this. It's like this. The first statement for a Docker file is basically you have to have. So what is after the first statement here? Your publishing is done, right? So you're done with this. You're done. Next is you need to get a VM and need to prepare your VM, right? So that's basically what you need to do. Now, in case of Docker, you don't need a VM, right? So you are going to use the Docker runtime as a VM, and you need to install all the necessary softwares or install SDKs runtime all the necessary softwares in a container. So first, you have to start with a base image. So base image talks about the what base image contains is basically for a certain type of applications to run, you need certain amount of libraries or the binaries of operating system. So there are already, all the bigger companies like Microsoft, or there are already people out there in the community who already creates those images and prepares them for us. So in this case, I am going to use Microsoft's .NET Core ASP.NET 3.1. So what does this mean is, um, your base image already contains the .NET Core ASP.NET 3.1 runtime. And how do you get it? Is you can go to Docker Hub. You can go to Docker Hub and explore. And here you can say ASP.NET Core 3.1, and you can get multiple. So the one that these are the official images. So try to use an official image always, because that's the one which will not likely to have any bugs or any viruses also. So you can use this, and there's a new location here, so just go there. So yeah, so I am using this one. So MCR Microsoft.NET ASP.NET. So that's the one that I'm using. And you can also check the versions. Let me check. So this is the version, this 3.1. This is the version that I'm also using. See here. So basically what I'm saying is that you prepare my environment, my Linux environment, or whatever it is, my environment, with all the necessary softwares that you need for uh, running Microsoft's core ASP.NET Core runtime. So basically, this talks about this, that are you please prepare my VM or my runtime, my container, with all the SDKs runtime necessary softwares. Now, next is you need you need to copy you need to copy next line. If you see here, you need to copy your binaries. Now in this case, my binary, where is my binary? My binary is in the folder. This is a folder, this particular folder it has. So I'm just going to copy it to, if you see here, bin. So this is my starting location. So I am in this location, ASP.NET with Docker. This is the location that I'm in. So my starting location is bin debug.NET Core 3.app 3.1 publish, and you please copy everything from here to my app. Next is we have to set up a working directory. Now, what is a working directory? Working directory is, so this is the working directory. So what does the working directory mean is, this is your current directory where your application, application will be pointed to. Your Docker will be running all the commands or all the executables will be running from that particular location. So whatever commands or whatever commands that you pass will be with reference to that particular folder. So what I have done is I have copied all my DLLs or all my binaries from the publish folder to the app folder. And now I am setting my working directory as the app folder. Next is I need to set this particular application as um, as an application. So basically, this has to be set as an application or as a executable. so that once this application is running, it can start up this service on its own, right? So then I'm just going to copy this file. So the command to so here what you see is the entry point. Entry point basically says that when your container starts up, your container starts. So basically it's like a VM starts, or it's like a you can think like a VM. So if the VM starts up, or in this case the container starts up, the container moment the container starts up, the entry point startup, after the startup, what the container does is it runs the .NET command with this particular DLL. This particular DLL is the DLL that we have, right? So this is what it does. So now this, so basically if you see, the first line creates the base image, second line copies the binary, third line is line number 3 is mm, setting the working directory, and line number 4 is setting your Docker image and giving it a runtime. So basically, whenever giving it an executable, so making it as an executable, and line 4 makes this Docker file as an executable. So whenever the Docker file, the Docker container starts up, it will start up this particular service. So now let me go back to. So now I'm back in ASP.NET with Docker folder. So now I have to run a Docker build command. So Docker build, what does the Docker build command does? Docker build command creates an image, um, and that image will be run at a later point in time. So that will show you that how you can run it in a later point in time. So let's build the Docker image, Docker build. And if I say just Docker build, and if the file name looks like Docker file like this, you can just say Docker build, and the file was not saved. So Docker file build -t software champion with API. So I've just given a tag. So I think it needs everything else. Okay. So now you see that it starts building. So now right now it is getting, so here it is getting this particular image. This image I don't have right now on my local machine. So it's getting that image. So it will take a little while. Let's come back when it is done. Now you can see that the image has been built. Now the Docker image has been built. Let's look at the Docker image. Let's say Docker image ls. You can see there is a Docker image has been created. Now let's run this Docker image. I'll say Docker run -d. It says detached mode, so you will not have your output on the shell. So it will be detached from the shell. -d, and then -p is the port. So by default, ASP.NET Core Applications runs on port 80 when it's running on a Docker. When it's running on a local machine, we have seen it's running on 5000 port. But when you deploy it in a Docker, it gets deployed. It runs on port 80. I'll show you that where do I find that information. But yeah, I mean it runs on port 80, and so it runs on a port 80 inside Docker. So we have to, when we try to see it on our local host, local machine, local browser. So we have to output it in a different port. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here. So I have to say where I want to output this. So I say I want to output the 8084 port of localhost. By default, it is localhost port. And which port I want to output? Port 80. Then give a name of the Docker so that of the Docker container so that you can identify that. I'll say champion1 and champion1, and then let's give the Docker. So now let's give the Docker image name. So 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 you see that the Docker container has been created. Let's quickly go to localhost 8084 port and see that if we can see that it is running or not. So you see, the application is running because it's giving me 808, giving me HTTP error 404, which means the application is running. It doesn't find any URL to serve the response, but yeah, it is up and running. Focused, and bingo, you have your application running. Now you go to the Docker container, and then you can see that there's a champion one. This is the container that we are running. And as I was telling you that when ASP.NET Core application runs on inside Docker, it runs on port 80. So here's the information. So it runs on port 80. It basically identifies itself through environment variables. So there are multiple environment variables which basically identifies it. This is one of the environment variables which figures out that which port it needs to run. Now it figures out that it is running in a .NET container, running in a container, .NET running in a container, which is true, which means that it has to it will run on port 80. We can set these environment variables, and we can change all of this, but maybe that's a topic for a different video. So that's all I had for today. In the next video, I'm going to show you how you can create an account in Docker Hub, and you can start publishing your Docker images in the Docker Hub, and how you can share it with a larger community. That's all for today. If you like my video, do not forget to subscribe and keep watching. Thank you.